Okay, the Ramban in Parshas Bahar, Pasuk Beis, Shabbos LaHashem. What is the meaning of Shabbos LaHashem? L'Shem Hashem. And he quotes Rashi, Keshem Shenema Shabbos Bereshis. Loshin Rashi. As it says regarding Shabbos Bereshis, which is every seventh day, it's a Shabbos LaHashem. Here also it's Shabbos LaHashem. The sabbatical year you designate for Hashem. He says, but if you take a look at the Midrash, that wasn't the direction. That's not the perspective. That it's like we have the seventh day, which is Shabbos LaHashem, to commemorate creation. We have the designated for Hashem here also. He says every moed, even the Yom Tovim, are Shabbos LaHashem. It's not limited to Shabbos Bereshis. So he feels Rashi, what he's saying is not accurate, because all the Moadim, they're also Shabbos LaHashem. V'lo Yomar be'echad mehem LaHashem, but it doesn't say LaHashem. Every Yom Tov is called Shabbos, but it doesn't say LaHashem. Avol Omar Yeh Lochem Shabboso. The holidays are Shabbos. They should be refrained. They should be refrained from creative activity. Again, it reiterates Shabboso. Not only do you have to refrain from activity which is not food related, even food related activity in Yom Kippur, you're not permitted to engage in. Loshna Brais and Tors Kahanim, Shabbos LaHashem, it's quoted in Tors Kahanim. Kishem shenem b'Shabbos Bereshis kachnem b'Shviyos Shabbos LaHashem. It's making the point, just as it says LaHashem regarding Shabbos Bereshis, it says regarding the sabbatically, it says LaHashem. So it's emphasizing the word LaHashem. Al pir Shabbos LaHashem Elokecho on b'Shabbos Bereshis. There it says Shabbos LaHashem Elokecho. Kivo Shabbos v'Novesh. There he refrained and he rested. Therefore, we're not permitted to engage in creative activity. As over there, you're not permitted, there's a losase. You're not permitted to engage in certain types of activity. Here also by Shemitah, certain agricultural activities are not permitted, like plowing and reaping. Those are the things you're not permitted. He says here, it's touching upon one of the great fundamentals, the secrets of the Torah. Faromas lanu Reb Eliezer Shekosov, v'tam Shabbos LaHashem b'yom HaShabbos, v'sod yimos olam romus mokom hazeh. The secret of regarding the years of existence, that's what's alluding to. V'kof oznecho lishmoa mashani rashoy lashmiacho bimenu. He says, be attentive, expression, kof, bend your ear to be attentive, which what I'm permitted to make you aware of, and the words which I am communicating this to you. Okay, he's saying only what I'm permitted to share with you, and the words that I'm communicating, you be attentive to those words. Yeah, and if you meritorious, you'll be able to comprehend what I'm telling you, even which is only a tidbit of what it's all about. This is the Ramban. Now, among the Rishonim, the Ramban was from the greatest Kabbalists. The Rishonim were not Kabbalists. The Ramban, it was known he was a Kabbalist. And very often you find the Ramban writes in his commentary that I will tell you what it is, but unless you have somebody who taught you what it means to understand, you will not understand what it means. You should just accept it, and that's the way it is. Very often the Ramban writes this way. He says he already had explained at the beginning of the Parsha of creation, the 6 days of creation allude to the existence of the world. Remember, we mentioned the Gemara that every day of creation corresponds to 1,000 years. And just as the 1,006 days, and then the seventh day, there was a refrain. Identically, the 6 days of creation correspond to 6,000 years of existence. The 7,000th, the world reverts back to pre-existence, to an ex nihilo state. And then the 8,000th year, the world will be recreated. except for the neshamos, the souls are going to remain intact. V'yom hashvi Shabbos LaHashem Elokecha bo yeh Shabbos LaHashem HaGodol. K'mo sheshaninu b'shvi mahu yomrim. What did they say on the Shvi? Mizvashil Yom HaShabbos. Lo'osid Lovo. The Leviim, when they sang, they said Tilim, when they brought the Karbonos, the Karban Tzibor, the communal offering. What chapter of Tilim did they say? Mizvashil Yom HaShabbos. La'osid Lovo Shekula Shabbos, which is referring to what's going to be in the future, which is all Shabbos. Umenucha l'chayu lomim. It will be Shabbos and Menucha for all eternity. L'chayu lomim. Now he explains now, V'hine hayomim asher bora b'masa bereishis, the days that are referred to with time of creation. V'ashonim yirmos al ashayeh b'rias b'vrias kol yimei olam, the creation of all the days of existence. Alkein hechmir hakosu b'shmita yosem b'chai v'lavim. Therefore, we find that there's a certain level of extreme liability by Shemitah more than any other lav, any other transgression, which we'll explain in a moment. Chazal tells the Gemara, which he's going to quote, the Gemara tells us that because the Jews did not keep 70 sabbatical years, we spent 70 years in exile in Bavel, each one corresponding to one of the sabbatical years which they did not keep. Okay? I mean, it's pretty extreme. I mean, we went into Golus. We were actually expelled from Eretz Yisrael. It's true. If we would have had the Shmirah, if we wouldn't have violated the three cardinal sins, as it says, the Beis Mikdash was destroyed because the Gila Rashvit was done by Avodah Zarah. That's why it was destroyed. But why were we exiled from the land? We were put out of the land because we violated 70 sabbatical years. And has the level of liability, as the Torah says, when God forbid the Jews violate the incestual relationships, it says the land will spit you out, the land will not tolerate you. Shnema Oz Tirtza Oretz Eshab. So said we read in the Tochacha, only after you spent enough time out of the land, only then will the land be satisfied. And then you're going to come back. The Hechzer Inyan Pomim Rabos, and it's mentioned many times in the Tochacha. Only after we suffer to that degree are we permitted to come back. Kol Yimei Hashama Tishbos, all the days that it will be desolate. The land was desolate during those 70 years. V'nema Oretz Te'ozev Mehem, the land will be abandoned. V'tiritz Hashab Sosel, and will satisfy the Shabbosos, meaning we satisfy those years that were not observed. Why do we go into Golus? Because Ini Adin, Val Ivus Adin. Ini Adin means they postpone adjudicating certain laws which have to be adjudicated or cases, and the corruption of justice, Val Shmita Sa'oretz. Those are the three. We go to Golus, Inu Adin, meaning you put it on the docket and you don't address it. The judgment, the verdict is corrupt, and Shmitas Oretz, and not observing the sabbatical years. Because if you do not keep Shemitah, Edo Modib Masa Bereshis, you're denying Masa Bereshis, creation, U'ba'olam habo, you're denying Masa Bereshis, and you're denying the world to come. What does it mean, the world to come? The world to come, what we call, after a person passes away, he goes to Olam Habo. That is not the ultimate world to come. That's referred to as Olam HaNeshamos in the Kabbalistic works. It's a holding pattern. The real Olam Habo, the future world, is speaking about when God will recreate the world and re-infuse the Neshamos that are worthy to be part of that eternity into the pure matter, and the spirituality of that soul will be able to fully spiritualize the physicality of the body, and the person will become a total spiritual being, the physical and the spiritual. Torah speaks about a Jewish slave. He worked 6 years. The 7th year, he's meant to be emancipated, set free. The Jews, they kept slaves. And it's the same idea. 6 years you work, the 7th year he's free. You have to let him free. And people, they kept their slaves. The Gozar Golus al Shiluch Avodim B'Shana Ashviyus, because they did not allow the slave to go free after the 6th year. Therefore, also it was the decree of Golus. Shenemar Anochi Karati Bris Esavosechem. It's a pasuk in Yirmiyah. Mikei Sheva Shonim. Kigam be'evid shviyus kiyovel. You hear this? Just as the land after 7 sabbatical years, the land returns to its original owner. The Jewish slave, after the 6 years working, the 7th year he has to return to himself. He has to be emancipated. So because they retained the slave, they did not let them go after 6 years. That's another reason why there was such a decree. By Yovel, Yivoda Ol Bebreshis Ad Ve'echulu. Ki Yoshuvu B'Yovel HaKolish Al Chuzoso V'Ishal Nishpachto. As it says later, what happens when Yovel comes, the Jubilee year? If you're a slave who said, I love my master, I love my wife, I love my children, they put it all through his ear, and after the 49th year, he returns back to his family. No matter what. As much as you want to remain with your master, after 49 years, you must return. If you didn't say that, after 6 years, you must return. You're emancipated. Okay? Kihu Mosad Hamaimid Yachrish. V'zeu shenema v'shavsa oretz Shabbos. Okorosim dror. This is regarding the Jubilee year. You will call freedom the land. You will declare freedom. Ki eretz hachayim hanirmezes b'posuk rishon. That's referring to Eretz HaChaim, the ultimate existence. Shabbos Nemar v'oretz eskor. V'arzachati ze pamayim. V'shemel ze ribzu rabzu rabbeinu ka'omrom chamishim shari bina nivra ba'olam. The 70 gates of bina, of understanding that were created. V'kulam nibsur l'Moshe chutz miyachot. The Ramban in his introduction brings this. You know, we speak about the Memte Shari Torah. The Jews, when they left Egypt, we advanced Memte Shari Torah, right? 70 levels of purity. The 49 levels of purity, that corresponded to the Memte Shari Bina. This 49 levels of what? Of depths of understanding. The 50th, the Ramban writes in its introduction in Bereshis, is understanding who Hashem is himself. And therefore, even Moshe Rabbeinu was not given that understanding. He says, L'Moshe chutz me'echod, ki kol shmita shar beis echod. Hear this. The 49 years, each one corresponds to one of the Shari Bina, to one of the gates of Bina, the depths of understanding of what spirituality is. Bina di'ul, Kol Havayo mitchilo atzov chutz min hayovel kodesh, and everything was communicated to Moshe that he understood. All aspects of existence, when Hashem says there should be, atzov until the end of the 49th year, chutz min hayovel kodesh, except Yovel, which is the Jubilee, which is the ultimate level of kedusha. That's the Ramban. So because it alludes and it represents the 49 levels of Bina, and ultimately the 50th is the ultimate, which is eternity, that's Kodesh, and even Moshe Rabbeinu didn't understand that, so retain that. That you don't let it return after 49 years. It's actually because what it alludes to, it's like denying the reality of what the 50th represents. That's why the reaction was so extreme or severe, because, and that's what it's kofar. It's like you're denying Masa Bereshis. All this was part of creation. Okay, that's the Ramban. And he says if you're meritorious, you'll be able to understand it to some degree what we just discussed. A person does not observe the Shabbos, and you're aware of the Shabbos, he's considered a heretic. You're denying creation. If you do not observe the Shabbos, you deny creation. And therefore, just as a person is a pagan, you deny God's existence. Identically, a person who's a Mumar L'chal Shabbos, he's like Kovid Avodah Zorah. He's like an idolater. Because what does Shabbos represent? That God is the creator, and God wills every aspect of creation. Not observing Shabbos, your behavior is a denial of that. So therefore, a person doesn't keep kosher. Okay? So you're failing at one level. But not observing Shabbos was all-encompassing because it represents believing in God, being the creator. And just as a pagan believes the deity is the one who causes things to happen, God detached himself, it's the deity, identically, not observing Shabbos, it's denial that he's the creator. That means he has nothing, he has no relevance to the existence, to the function of existence for that reason. Shabbos LaHashem, Shegam Ovdi Adamo, even the farmers, the agriculturists, Kasher Yishbesu Bishona Halpi, when they refrain, when they go into sabbatical mode during this year, Yisoru Lidrus Hashem Be'ofin Ma. They'll be touched to seek out Hashem to some level. Person is a farmer. He has a very limited level of understanding of spirituality. But even him, when he detaches himself from what's the most mundane, even he will be aroused to seek out and have an understanding which he wouldn't have if he'd be engaged in the agricultural process. You know, in life, as much as things seem to be obvious, but if you have distraction, you can't be a beneficiary of what you see. Even if you see it, you're not touched by it. So the farmer, by detaching himself, not engaging in agriculture, he says, Yisoru Lidrus Hashem Ba'ofen Ma. To some degree, you know, it's interesting. There was a certain person many years ago. Today he's involved as a Talmud of Yad Avram, not that he's on, but he became a Baal Tshuva as a result of this. He had, what's it called? Epstein-Barr syndrome. And this person, he was single, he was a jet setter, and he would work like a fiend, and he'd vacation like a fiend. And all of a sudden, he's overcome by fatigue, and he's stuck in bed. And he's a very smart person. And he's lying in bed, he's looking at the ceiling, looking at the walls, and he realizes, where's he going in life? And due to being confined for those months, he started to focus on what life's all about, and that's why he became a Baal Tshuva. I mean, he was a traditional Jew, but to become a Baal Tshuva, to want to start learning and advancing and wanting to get married, many things happened due to that Epstein-Barr syndrome situation. So again, as he says, even the farmer, when he detaches himself from the most mundane, Yisoru Lidrus Hashem Ba'ofen Ma, to some degree, to whatever, but that degree will actually touch him in a way which will be beneficial, because the level of distraction is not going to be there. Sheishanim Tizrach Sodecho, for 6 years you plant your field. Sheishanim Tizmar Kamecho, for 6 years you reap your vineyard. Vosaftes Tuoso, and you gather in your grain. Ubashana Shvius, when the 7th year comes, the 7th year, Shabbos Shabbos and Yil Oretz. What is that Shabbos Shabbos and this refrain? Shabbos LaHashem. That is Shabbos LaHashem. Sotcho Lo Sizro v'Chamach Lo Sizmor. It seems to be a little, repetitious here. It starts off, right? It's Shabbos LaHashem. Then again, it says, 6 years you plant and you harvest and this, so on. So, and 7th year, Shabbos again, the land, again, Shabbos LaHashem. And therefore, Sotchelo, Sizra Chamachlo Sizra. I mean, that's what we said in the previous posuk, right? Even things that grow wild by themselves, even though you didn't plant them, you're not permitted to reap. It is even some things that just are on the tree, it's not cultivated. You're not permitted to reap. Shna Shabboson, Loritz. Voice of Shabbos Lochem Lochlo, and that sabbatical year is Lochem for you, Lochlo to eat. Lochol Abdul Mosecho. You're a slave, your maidservant, the schircho usoshovcho. Hagor mimoch. Rashi says, even non-Jews. Meaning, the produce of the sabbatical year is available to everyone. It's onerless. You have no right to deny anybody entry into your field to partake of that produce. Meaning the people, of course, when they pick it, they're harvest, but it's not a harvest. It's on a personal level. The Gemara tells us, based on psukim, if a person doesn't allow other people to come into his field, that produce you're not permitted to eat. He's not permitted to do it, and if he does, that produce is off limits. It has to be available to everyone, Jew and non-Jew alike, friend, foe. Everybody goes in there. They take what they want. You know, there's the famous Medrash at the beginning of Parshas Medrash Nahum at the beginning of Vayikra. We find that at Tana Kabbalah Torah we said Nasa v'Nishma, and when we said Nasa v'Nishma, we accepted the Torah unequivocally. There was a Baskol that said immediately, Migila Rosel Labanai, who revealed the secret to my children that the Jews, they speak like Malochim, that the Malochim, they get the charge, and then God gives, they're waiting, ready to do the will of Hashem, then they're given the charge, what to do. And we spoke identically with them, Naseh, we will do, we're ready to do the will of Hashem, just tell us what to do. And therefore the Jews are called Malochim Gibori Koach. They're like angels who have enormous power, enormous strength. Because there's a question, who are the Gibori Koach in the Pasuk? Were the Gibori Koach the Jews at Sinai, when we said Nasir Nishma, meaning just as Malochim Gibori Koach, the angels of the Gibor, we were also similar to them, or the Gibor Koach are referred to the Shomrei Shvius. The people who observed the Shemitah, the sabbatical years, they're the Gibor Koach. Why are they the Gibor Koach? So the Medrash says, you invest 6 years of your life, your sweat and blood, your means, you cultivate it, you plant it, you put fences up to protect it. What happens when the 7th year comes? The fences come down. Anybody, whoever he may be, has a right to come into your property and take whatever he wants. To stand by the wayside and watch this happening, it's something which humanly is almost, it's just too much to tolerate. But yet, if you do tolerate it and you allow it, you're a Gibor Koach. Why Gibor Koach? Because Ezeu Gibor HaKovish Yitzro, as it is in Pirkei Avos. Who is the strong one? The one who's able to suppress his inclination. Although humanly, it's something you almost can't contain yourself. Seeing everything that you created and invested in is being taken, and you have no say in the matter, to be able to watch this and tolerate it, you're the ultimate Gibor. That means you're negating yourself to the will of Hashem. Because Hashem says that's the way it is, that's the way it is. Okay? That's the Gibor Koach. And this happens every 7 years. Because I asked the question, we could see later, a person who observes the Shemitah, if everything, the 7th year, you're not permitted to plant and to cultivate, so what do we need? So what happens when the 8th year comes? You're not permitted, so you first can stop planting in the 8th year. So when is it going to be available? At the end of the 8th year. So you're going to ask a question, the pasuk later, you're going to ask, what are we going to eat? So what does the Torah say? I will command my bracha, and the 6th year, you can have a 3-year yield. The yield of the 3rd year will be the equivalent of 6 years, of 3 years. You have the 6th year, the 7th year, and into the 8th year, and then at the end, 8th year, you'll have what you planted in the 8th year. In the 6th year, you can have the equivalent of 3 years. So I ask the question, if somebody says to you, for the next 3 years, you don't have to work, money in the bank in advance, and you go on vacation. Okay? It's a terrific deal. Hashem gives you 3 years, and it says, V'oses Hashana Asad L'shol L'shonim. The field will produce 3 years worth of produce. And yet it says, the Jews did not observe 70 Shmitos. 70 sabbatical years they did not keep. And the reason why we were put out of Eretz Yisrael for 70 years, for each time we violated one of the sabbatical years, we were put out. We violated the landlord-tenant agreement. So for every year we violated the contract, we're put out of the land. But if Hashem gave us everything in advance in the 3rd year, in the 6th year, to cover the next 3 years, why did they violate the laws of Shmita? Were they that greedy? What exactly was the difficulty? Alan was shaking his head. He remembers what I said.
That was the question I was going to ask.
Right?
How could it be?
So we said exactly what this measure is saying. Why are you Giborei Koach? Here I create, I invest. 7th year comes, any Tom, Dick, and Harry, your enemy, your arch enemy, has a right to go into your field and take what he wants, and you have no say in the matter. So we're not talking about the money. It's the ego, it's the person. You're totally negated as if you don't exist. Your opinion, your feelings mean nothing. Whoever wants to come in, it says the fences come down, people come in, it's like hordes of people, it's like the locusts are coming, and you have no say in the matter. To be able to watch this and tolerate this, you're a Giborei Koach. So it's not the money. It's watching what you create being taken from you. That's the difficulty. And that they could not tolerate. What do people do for honor? Chofetz Chaim makes a very interesting point, but not relating to this. Because the person will go on a business trip with a 5% chance and they succeed. And very often he comes back with all the investment to cover the trip and the investment of time and money, being away from your family, and you're willing to do it. And there may not be any return on that investment of time. But people do it anyway, in either case. By Torah, whatever we invest in our spirituality, guaranteed return at a level which is not fathomable. Schar b'ha'al maleko. But yet, something which is almost like a fiction, most times it doesn't, you don't succeed. You're willing to put yourself out and give the pound of flesh. But for spirituality, we're not willing. Because we don't see the ace in the hole. We don't see it. Now, why? Why is a person willing for that, yes, and for Torah, not? Now, what is the essence of a person? What drives the person? You know what drives us? Our ego. Acknowledgement, recognition. You're a great Talmud Chacham. It's a great thing. In God's eyes, you're special. But in the world's eye, what are you? You're a provincial Jew, an archaic person, so you know the Talmud. Let's see you buy a loaf of bread with knowing the Talmud. Let's see you living in that $1 million mansion or driving that car with knowing the Talmud. So what gives you that recognition, that sense of respect and purpose in the eyes of the world? Material success. Therefore, since that's the essence of the person, that drives the person. You're willing to take chances, even though I may not succeed, I'm willing to give it a try. Because that is everything what it's all about. Torah, that's not what it's all about. So you have to be spiritualized to have the capacity to appreciate what that's all about. It's the same thing. Who am I? I created this. This is my domain. This is my fiefdom. You're going to come in without permission, and I have no say in the matter. It's nearly you're ready to literally to have a meltdown. But if you watch it and accept it, that means you're an spiritual person. That's not what it's all about. And therefore, that's Ezel Gibor HaKovish Yisrael. If you live in Eretz Yisrael, you have to leave the corner of your field for the poor. You have to leave the gleanings of the field for the poor. Okay? And it uses the term, lo sechale pas sodecha. Don't consume the corner of your field. Leket tzircha lo slaket. If you forget behind sheaves, you have to leave it for the poor. But he used the term, lo sechala. So the Medrash quotes a pasuk from Novi, that we don't consume the corners of our field, therefore at the end of time, we will not be consumed. But the nations of the world who do consume the corners of the field, at the end of time, they will be consumed. And last week's parsha, we speak about the regalim, and all of a sudden, middle of the regalim, we speak about giving the percentages to the poor. It all of a sudden put in the middle. Why? To teach us, Rashi brings Chazal, that if you give matnas aniyim, you give the tithes to the poor, Hashem values it like you built a base of Migdosh and you brought a korban. That's how much Hashem values them. Why? Why is giving to the poor, giving the various percentages or whatever you're supposed to the poor, Hashem values it to that degree, like you built a base of Migdosh and like you brought a korban. And because we leave the gleanings of the field or the corners of the field, therefore, as we didn't consume the corner, we will not be consumed at the end of time. We're not going to be annihilated, Chas v'shalom, at the end of time. We're going to be part of eternity. What is the understanding? Now, what we studied, if a Kohen goes to you and says, I want you to give me your truma, do you have an obligation to give me your truma? The answer is no. A Levi says, I want you to give him your meiser. You have no obligation. Why? So the Gemara tells it's based on psukim. The one who tithes the truma, the meiser, whatever it is, he has tovas hano. He has a right to choose which Kohen he wants to give it to. He has a right to choose which Levi he wants to give it to. So as much as he has to give away that percentage, but he still dictates who the recipient of that's going to be. So he has goodwill. He still retains a degree of ownership by determining who he gives it to, who he releases it to. That's exercising ownership. When we speak about leaving the corners of your field for the poor, once you must leave it, any poor person has a right to take it. You have no say in the matter. To dictate, you have no right to dictate anymore. You have to, it's a forfeiture. You leave the gleanings, you must leave it for the poor. So it has that characteristic of Shemitah. So just as because you negate yourself for Hashem, although you have no say in the matter, like Truma and Meiser, and yet you do it and you don't consume the corner of your field, because of that characteristic that you possess, therefore you're part of eternity. Shemitah, Gibori Koach, you have no say in the matter. You can't dictate who comes, who doesn't come in. It's ownerless. Friend, foe, whoever it is, and they could even, like Alan said, let's say they take before you had a chance to take. You're left out in the cold. You don't have first rights. And despite that, you allow it to happen, you're a malach. That's Gibori Koach. Because that's demonstrating your negation to Hashem.
How about the other way? How about the gates open?